Stefan's hand slammed against the wall beside Lavender's head, the sound echoing through the dimly lit hallway outside the Miami Gala. Her chest heaved, heart hammering so loud she was certain he could hear it. His jaw clenched, every muscle in his body taut with restraint she could feel radiating off him in waves. "You need to stop looking at me like that," she breathed, hating how her voice shook. "Like what?" His voice was rough, dangerous. "Like you're trying to memorize me. Like I'm not your best friend's little sister." She forced herself to hold his gaze, even as heat pooled low in her stomach. "Like you didn't watch me leave for London in braids and braces." He stepped closer, eliminating what little space remained between them. When he spoke, his voice dropped to something that made her knees weak. "That girl got on a plane 6 years ago. The woman standing in front of me?" His eyes traced her face like he was committing every detail to memory. "She's a complete stranger, and I can't—" He cut himself off abruptly, stepping back so fast she nearly stumbled forward. The loss of his proximity felt physical. "Your brother's inside." She watched him walk away, fists clenched at her sides, fighting the urge to call him back, fighting the truth she'd been running from since the moment she returned home. Stefan disappeared through the glass doors back into the gala, leaving her alone with her racing pulse and the echo of words he couldn't finish. "Welcome back, my lovely family. Thank you so much for all the sweet comments and likes on every post. Thank you for trusting this channel. Tell me in the comments which city you're watching from." Lavender Evermont stood in the JFK arrivals terminal with her MBA diploma packed in designer luggage and 6 years of London Polish wrapped around her like armor. At 25, she'd transformed herself from the awkward girl who'd left into someone who commanded boardrooms and closed deals in 3 languages. But standing there, watching passengers reunite with families, she felt the old nervousness creep back in. Coming home meant facing everything she'd left behind, including him. "Lavender, over here." Jasper's voice cut through the crowd. Her older brother pushed through travelers with the same careless confidence he'd always had, grinning like she'd only been gone for a weekend instead of 6 years. He pulled her into a hug that lifted her off her feet. "Look at you, all grown up and fancy. Did you bring the accent back with you?" She laughed, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "It's called proper pronunciation, Jasper. See? Posh." He grabbed her largest suitcase, steering them toward the exit. "Fair warning, little sister. Things have changed around here. Dad's been preparing for your return like it's the second coming. Mom's been planning dinners for weeks, and Stefan—" He paused, something shifting in his expression. "Stefan's different now." Her heart stuttered at the name, but she kept her expression neutral. "Different how?" "All business. Serious. Dad's been grooming him for partner. He's VP of acquisitions now, closing deals left and right." Jasper shot her a sidelong glance. "He's been asking about you, actually. Wants to know if you're still scared of elevators." Heat crept up her neck. Of course, Stefan would remember that humiliating childhood incident. She rolled her eyes, aiming for casual dismissal even as something dangerous fluttered in her chest. "I got over that years ago." "Sure you did." Jasper's grin was knowing. "Just warning you, Lav. He's not the guy you remember. None of us are." The Evermont estate looked exactly the same, sprawling and elegant against the Connecticut skyline. Inside, crystal chandeliers sparkled over the dining table where her parents waited. Her father, Thomas Evermont, stood when she entered, and she saw the pride flash across his weathered face before he schooled it into professional assessment. Her mother's eyes glistened with tears she wouldn't shed until later, in private. Dinner started with pleasantries and catching up, but Lavender felt the shift when her father set down his wine glass with deliberate precision. She knew that gesture. It meant business. "Lavender, your mother and I have made a decision." Thomas's voice carried the authority that had built a real estate empire from nothing. "You're starting as COO on Monday." Wine sprayed across the table as Jasper choked. "She just got back. Don't you think?" "I think your sister earned her MBA from the London School of Economics, with honors." Their father's tone left no room for argument. "I think she's been preparing for this role since she was 12 years old, shadowing me at the office. I think we need fresh vision, and she's exactly what this company needs. Lavender felt everyone's eyes on her. This was her moment. She'd spent years working toward it, proving herself an ocean away so no one could say she'd gotten the position through nepotism. She met her father's gaze steadily. I've been analyzing the company's performance metrics for the past year. The London market's shift towards sustainable luxury development is a trend we should have capitalized on 18 months ago. I have a 3-year strategic plan ready for review. Her father's smile was subtle but genuine. That's my girl. But then his expression darkened, and Lavender felt ice slide down her spine. However, we have a significant problem. 3 major acquisitions lost in the past 6 months. Seattle, Boston, and the downtown Miami project. Different clients, different property types, but the same pattern every time. What pattern? Lavender leaned forward, her strategic mind already churning through possibilities. Our competitors knew our exact bids, down to the dollar, same timelines, same development plans, same everything. Thomas's fingers drummed against the table, the only sign of his agitation. Someone with executive-level access is leaking our information. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lavender's eyes darted to Jasper, catching the way his knuckles went white around his wineglass, the muscle jumping in his jaw. But he said nothing, staring at his plate with sudden intense focus. Do you know who? She asked carefully. Not yet, but I will. Her father's voice carried a promise and a threat. Until then, trust no one. Not colleagues, not friends, not even family advisors we've known for decades. Lavender barely slept that night, her mind racing with strategy and suspicion. Monday morning arrived with crystalline clarity, the kind of perfect fall day that felt designed for new beginnings. She dressed in a tailored navy suit that screamed competence and authority, her heels clicking against marble as she entered Evermont Real Estate's glass tower headquarters. The change in atmosphere was immediate. Employees who'd known her as Jasper's little sister now stared with barely concealed curiosity. Whispers followed her path to the executive floor. She kept her spine straight, her expression confident, channeling every ounce of the woman she'd become in London. The executive floor smelled like expensive coffee and ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, and Lavender paused to take in the view that would now be hers. Then she heard it. A laugh, deep and rich, coming from the corner office. Her stomach did something complicated and entirely inappropriate. She turned toward the sound, her heart suddenly hammering. Through the glass walls, she saw him. Stefan Cole stood with his back to her, phone pressed to his ear, one hand gesturing as he spoke. Years had been generous to him. He'd always been handsome in that effortless way that made her teenage self stumble over words. But now he'd grown into his features. Broader shoulders filled out his tailored suit. His hair was slightly longer than she remembered, professionally tousled in a way that probably cost a fortune to make look careless. Then he turned around. Time did something strange, stretching and compressing simultaneously. His eyes found hers through the glass, and his smile froze halfway. The coffee mug he'd been raising stopped in midair. For 3 heartbeats, maybe 4, they just stared at each other across the space and years of distance. She watched recognition crash over his face like a wave. Then something else. Something that made her pulse jump. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, tracking from her face down to her heels and back up again. And she saw the exact moment he registered that she wasn't the girl who'd left. She was something else entirely. He said something quick into the phone and hung up, setting the mug down carefully. When he walked toward her, she had time to notice everything. The confident stride, the way his suit fit perfectly, the slight furrow between his brows that suggested he was working through the same complicated thoughts she was. Lavender. Her name sounded different in his voice now, rougher around the edges. Welcome back. She extended her hand, keeping her expression professional, even as her pulse raced traitorously. Stefan, it's good to see you. His hand engulfed hers, warm and firm, and she felt the contact everywhere. The handshake lasted a fraction too long, neither of them seeming able to let go first. When they finally did, her palm tingled. Somewhere behind her, she heard an assistant whisper, "Is it just me? Or could you fry an egg on that tension?" The board meeting was scheduled for 9. Lavender walked in with her tablet and presentation materials, taking a seat at the massive conference table that had intimidated her as a child. Now she belonged here. She'd earned this chair. The room filled quickly with executives she'd need to win over. Her father sat at the head, Stefan to his right. Lavender took the seat directly across from Stefan, meeting his eyes with deliberate challenge. He raised one eyebrow slightly. Game on. Let's discuss the Castellano situation, Thomas began. Antonio Castellano owns prime beachfront property in Miami. Luxury resort potential. $50 million development opportunity. Stefan's been handling preliminary negotiations. Stefan? Stefan stood, clicking through his presentation with practiced ease. Conservative projections. Traditional luxury approach. Safe, proven strategies. The Castellanos are old money. Fourth-generation wealth. They value tradition and stability. We need to move carefully, build trust before presenting anything too aggressive. Lavender waited until he finished, counting to 3 before she spoke. Old money doesn't mean scared money, and tradition doesn't mean stagnation. Every head turned toward her. Stefan's eyes narrowed slightly. With respect to Stefan's approach, she continued, standing and pulling up her own presentation on her tablet. I reviewed the Castellano portfolio last night. They've made 3 major investments in the past 5 years, and all 3 were bold moves that paid off spectacularly. They don't want careful. They want exceptional. She cast her screen to the main display, watching her eco-luxury resort concept materialize. Luxury sustainable development, solar integration that's invisible to guests, water reclamation systems hidden in the architecture. We're not just building a resort. We're building the future of luxury hospitality, and the Castellanos get to be the visionaries who made it happen. The room was silent. Stefan's jaw ticked, a muscle jumping in the way it always did when he was trying to control his reaction. But his eyes showed something else, something that looked almost like admiration mixed with frustration. Bold can also mean reckless, he said carefully, and careful can mean cowardly. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. Which are we? Lavender. The market's shifting, Stefan. Either we shift with it, or we become irrelevant. I didn't get my MBA to play it safe. Thomas's laugh broke the tension. Welcome back, Lavender. This is exactly the fresh perspective we needed. He looked between them, clearly enjoying himself. Stefan, work with Lavender on this. Combined approach. Your experience with the family, her innovative angle. Make it work. Stefan nodded, professional mask firmly in place, but Lavender saw his hands flex slightly. Of course. As people filed out, Stefan lingered, waiting until they were alone. He approached her slowly, hands in his pockets, and she fought the urge to step back, not from fear, from something far more dangerous. That was quite an entrance, he said quietly. I'm not here to play assistant, Stefan. I'm here to lead. Something flickered across his face, too quick to name. I can see that. His voice dropped lower. You've grown up. Time tends to do that. She refused to let him see how his proximity affected her, how her skin felt too tight and her heart too fast. A beat of loaded silence stretched between them. Then Stefan cleared his throat. We should grab coffee. Go over the Castellano strategy, combine our approaches. My office, tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. She gathered her materials, not waiting for his response. Don't be late. She walked out without looking back, but she felt his eyes on her the entire way, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that something fundamental had shifted between them. The question was whether that shift would destroy everything or save it. By 8 p.m., Lavender was still at her desk, reviewing files and making notes. She heard footsteps and looked up to find Stefan leaning against her doorframe, tie loosened, looking unfairly good despite the long day. You're still here, he observed. So are you. She closed her laptop, suddenly aware of how empty the office had become. Fair point. He pushed off the doorframe. Come on, I'll walk you out. They rode the elevator in silence that felt heavy with unspoken things. Lavender kept her eyes forward, hyper-aware of Stefan's presence beside her, the heat radiating from his body in the small space. London treated you well, he said finally, his voice carefully casual. It taught me what I'm capable of, who I am, without everyone's expectations. Jasper missed you. He'd never admit it, but he did. She glanced at him, catching the way he was studying her profile. What about you, Stefan? Did you miss me? The elevator doors began to close. Stefan's hand shot out to stop them, and suddenly they were, stepping inside together, and the doors slid shut, cocooning them in brushed metal and tension. That's complicated, he said after a long pause. Complicated how? The elevator lurched violently. Lavender stumbled, and Stefan's hands shot out to steady her, gripping her arms. Then the lights flickered once, twice, and died. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red, and the elevator stopped moving entirely. No. The word escaped as a gasp. Lavender's chest tightened, memories flooding back with visceral force. 8 years old, trapped in darkness, screaming until her voice gave out. No, no, no! Hey! Stefan's voice cut through the panic. Lavender, it's okay, just a malfunction. But her breathing was already spiraling, coming too fast, making her dizzy. She backed against the wall, sliding down slightly, and distantly registered that she was embarrassing herself, but the fear was too big, too consuming. Look at me. Stefan moved, closer, but didn't touch her, giving her space even as he filled her vision. Lavender, eyes on me. She forced herself to meet his gaze. Even in the red emergency lighting, his eyes were steady, calm, anchoring. Breathe with me, he said, his voice low and commanding. In for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Can you do that? She tried and failed, gasping. Yes, you can. Follow me, he demonstrated, exaggerating his breathing so she could see and hear it. In. 2. 3. 4. Hold. 2. 3. 4. Out. 2. 3. 4. Slowly, painfully, her breathing began to sync with his. 5 minutes passed, maybe 10. The panic receded from immediate crisis to manageable fear. She became aware of tears on her cheeks, of how badly she was shaking. I'm sorry, she whispered. This is stupid. Childhood phobia. Not stupid. Stefan's voice was gentle in a way that made her chest ache for different reasons. You got trapped for 3 hours when you were 8. Jasper told me. You had nightmares for months. She stared at him. You remember that? I remember everything about you. The words hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them could afford to explore. The space felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. Lavender realized Stefan was close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. Stefan, she didn't know what she was asking. I read your thesis, he said instead, voice rough. Emerging markets and sustainable development in post-Brexit Europe. It was brilliant. The section on adaptive reuse of historic properties? That's going to change how developers approach heritage buildings. Air left her lungs. You read my thesis? Twice. A slight smile tugged at his mouth. You're going to revolutionize this industry, Lavender. You're going to make the rest of us look like dinosaurs. She felt herself looking at him differently now, seeing past the professional veneer to something vulnerable underneath. Why did you ask Jasper about me? All these years, checking up on me. His jaw tightened, something complicated crossing his features. Because. The elevator jolted back to life with a mechanical groan. The lights flickered back on, harsh and fluorescent after the red glow. The moment shattered like glass. Stefan stepped back quickly, professionally, as the elevator began descending again. The doors opened to the lobby, and Lavender's heart sank. Jasper stood there, concern etched across his features, security guard beside him. There you guys are. Security said the elevator malfunctioned. Lav, you okay? Jasper's eyes darted between them, and Lavender was suddenly, painfully aware of how they must look, her eyes red from crying. Stefan standing too close, both of them breathing too hard. Fine, she managed, forcing steadiness into her voice. Stefan just helped me through it. Good man. Jasper clapped Stefan on the shoulder, completely oblivious to the tension crackling between them. Come on, drinks on me. We're celebrating Lav's first day properly." Stefan and Lavender's eyes met over Jasper's shoulder. A question hung in the air between them, unfinished and dangerous. Then Stefan looked away first, running a hand through his hair. "Rain check," he said. "Early meeting tomorrow." As Jasper led her toward the parking garage, still chattering about dinner plans, Lavender glanced back. Stefan stood by the elevator, watching her leave, his expression unreadable. That elevator ride changed everything, because in 20 minutes trapped together, Stefan had looked at her like she mattered, like she was more than Jasper's little sister, like he'd been waiting for her to come home. And now that she'd seen it, she couldn't unsee it, couldn't pretend she didn't want him to look at her that way again. Couldn't ignore the truth that had been building since the moment she returned. She was in serious trouble. 1 week into her role as COO, Lavender found herself alone in the office at midnight, the city lights of Manhattan creating shadows across the conference room where she'd spread out acquisition files like puzzle pieces. She pulled up the Seattle property file first. $30 million luxury development, 18 months projected. They'd lost it to Meridian Properties by a margin so slim it felt personal. Then she opened Meridian's winning proposal, obtained through industry contacts. Her coffee went cold in her hand. The numbers were identical. Same development timeline, same architectural approach, same projected ROI down to the decimal point. The only difference was Meridian had submitted theirs 3 hours earlier. Boston file, same story. Downtown Miami project, same pattern. Someone was handing over complete strategic packages. She pulled up the access logs, executive-level clearance required. The list was short. Her father, herself, Jasper, Richard, and Stefan. Stefan, who'd been promoted to VP of Acquisitions 8 months ago. Stefan, who'd had access to all 3 leaked deals. Stefan, who looked at her like she was the only woman in the world but never explained why. No, her heart rejected it even as her mind assembled the evidence. But the files didn't lie. Morning came too quickly. Lavender requested a private meeting with her father before the day officially started, finding him already at his desk at 6 a.m., looking older than she remembered. "I found something," she said without preamble, closing the door behind her. "The leaks. They're definitely internal. Executive-level access." Thomas Evermont's face didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "I know. I've suspected for months." "Then why haven't you?" "Because I don't know who." He cut her off, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "And accusing the wrong person would destroy us faster than any leak. This company is built on trust, Lavender. Break that, and we have nothing." She sat across from him. "Who has the access?" "You, me, Jasper, Stefan, and Richard." He ticked them off on his fingers like counting casualties. "That's it." Richard. The thought stuck in her throat. Richard had been at her 8th birthday party, had taught her to play chess, had been her father's right hand for 2 decades. "Lavender." His voice carried a warning and a plea. "Be careful who you trust. Even people we love are capable of betrayal when desperate enough." The words followed her through the day, coloring every interaction. She found herself watching Stefan during meetings, analyzing his body language. He was professional, brilliant, commanding the room with ease. But twice she caught him on phone calls, his voice dropping low, his posture tense. And when he noticed her watching, his expression shifted before he smiled. That evening, she followed him. It was reckless and possibly insane, but she had to know. Stefan left the office at 8, and she kept 3 cars back as he drove through Manhattan. Her heart hammered with anticipation and dread. He pulled into a boxing gym in Brooklyn, the kind with flickering neon and cracked pavement. Through the windows, she watched him change and approach a heavy bag. Then he started hitting it. Not training, destroying. Each punch landed with brutal force, his entire body behind the impact. Sweat soaked through his shirt within minutes, his face twisted with something that looked like anguish, like he was fighting demons she couldn't see. He beat that bag for 45 minutes straight, until his knuckles were wrapped in bloodied tape and his shoulders shook from exhaustion. This wasn't the behavior of a guilty man celebrating betrayal. This was someone carrying a weight that was crushing him. Lavender drove home with more questions than answers. The emergency meeting was called Friday afternoon, with 4 words from her father. "We have a situation." The executive team assembled in the glass-walled conference room, and Lavender felt the tension before anyone spoke. "The Castellanos want to meet the team in person," Thomas announced without preamble. "Miami, next week." Lavender straightened. This was good. Face-to-face meetings were her strength, and the eco-luxury concept would shine in presentation. "Excellent. I'll prepare there's a complication." Her father's expression was carefully neutral in a way that made her nervous. Antonio Castellano is old world in his values, traditional, family-oriented. He specifically requested to meet our stable leadership. His words, preferably married couples running the company together. Jasper laughed from across the table. "That's insane. What decade is he living in?" "The decade where he owns $50 million worth of prime Miami beachfront that we desperately need." Thomas's voice cut through the room like ice. "Which is why Stefan and Lavender will go as a married couple." The words hit like a physical blow. Lavender's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Across the table, Stefan's face went carefully blank. "Excuse me?" Stefan's voice was deadly calm. "Absolutely not," Lavender said simultaneously. Thomas looked between them with something that might have been amusement if the situation weren't so absurd. "You two have natural chemistry. Everyone can see it. The Castellanos need to see stable, married leadership. You'll attend dinners, site visits, close the deal. 3 days. Consider it method acting." "Sir, this crosses every professional boundary," Stefan started. "So does losing this company." Her father's voice turned to steel. "We need this win. The board needs this win. Both of you are professionals. Make it work." Jasper was still laughing, clearly thinking this was the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. "Wait, you actually think they have chemistry? Stefan and Lav?" "No," they said in unison. Too quickly, too defensively. Jasper's laughter died, his eyes narrowing as he looked between them. For a horrible moment, Lavender thought he saw through them, saw the tension that crackled every time they were in the same room. But then he shrugged. "Whatever, it's your funeral." The meeting ended with logistics and travel arrangements. Stefan left without looking at her, his jaw tight, and Lavender felt something between relief and disappointment. 2 hours later, she found herself in an empty conference room with Stefan, door closed, visible to the entire office through the glass walls. Employees passed by slowly, clearly trying to catch glimpses of what was happening. "This is ridiculous," she said, arms crossed. "Agreed." Stefan stood, with his hands in his pockets, maintaining careful distance. "But we're professionals. We can handle 3 days of pretending." "Can we?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Too honest, too revealing. His eyes locked on hers, dark and unreadable. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Then he cleared his throat, breaking the spell. "We'll need the basics. Matching rings, a wedding photo for our wallets, a story that holds up under questioning." "Right. The story." Lavender pulled out her phone, needing something to do with her hands. "How we met. College, you were Jasper's roommate. How long we've been married. 2 years seems believable. Our dynamic. We'll need to seem comfortable." Stefan interrupted, his voice lower. "With each other. Physically comfortable." Her mouth went dry. "Comfortable how?" He stepped closer, closing the distance between them until she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Like this." His hand found hers, fingers interlacing slowly, deliberately. The contact shot through her like electricity, making her pulse jump. His thumb traced circles on her palm, and she felt the touch everywhere. "Couples touch without thinking," he said quietly, his voice doing dangerous things to her pulse. "A hand on the small of your back, fingers brushing in passing. Standing close in a way that says, we belong to each other." "Right. Casual intimacy." Her voice came out shakier than she intended. "We'll need pet names." His thumb continued its maddening circles. "What do I call you in public? What do you call me?" "Lavender works fine." "Wives don't call their husbands by their first names, darling." The endearment dripped from his tongue like honey. Try again. She glared at him, trying to ignore how her body responded to that single word. What do you suggest? Sweetheart? Baby? Love? Each option came with that thumb stroking her hand, that dark intensity in his eyes. What feels natural? In your dreams, Stefan. His smirk was slow, dangerous, and entirely too knowing. More than you know. The words hung between them, loaded with implications that made her heart race. Did he just? But before she could process it, he released her hand and stepped back to professional distance, leaving her palm tingling. Pack light, he said, his voice carefully neutral again. We leave tomorrow. He walked out, and Lavender stood there, staring at her hand like it belonged to someone else. 3 days. She had to pretend to be married to Stefan Cole for 3 days. The man she was investigating for corporate espionage. The man who made her forget every professional boundary she'd ever set. She was either going to close the biggest deal of her career or destroy everything she'd worked for. Possibly both. The Miami resort was the kind of place that existed in travel magazines and unrealistic fantasies. White sand beaches, palm trees swaying in ocean breeze, architecture that screamed luxury without being gaudy. Their suite was on the top floor, oceanfront, and absolutely stunning. It also had 1 bed. Lavender stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand, staring at the king-sized bed like it might bite her. You've got to be kidding me. Stefan appeared beside her, his jaw tight. I'll take the couch. She looked at the love seat positioned by the window. It was elegant, expensive, and roughly 4 feet long. Stefan was 6'2". That's not a couch. That's decorative furniture. Your legs will hang off. I've slept in worse places. When? Navy SEAL training you forgot to mention? College. Jasper snored like a freight train. Despite the tension, his mouth quirked. 3 years of sleeping on dorm room floors builds character. She laughed before she could stop herself, and something eased between them. They were still standing too, close in the doorway, but it felt less dangerous suddenly, almost normal. They unpacked in careful silence, maintaining opposite sides of the suite. Lavender hung her dresses in the closet, organized her toiletries in the bathroom, set her laptop up on the desk, everything precise and controlled, the way she liked it. You need to mess that up, Stefan said from behind her. She turned to find him holding one of his perfectly pressed shirts. Excuse me? Real couples don't have military precision luggage. He deliberately wrinkled the shirt before tossing it on a chair. We need to look like we actually live together. Fine. She grabbed his toiletries bag and started pulling items out, scattering them across the bathroom counter. Real husbands don't keep their razors in alphabetical order. I don't. He stopped, looking at his bag. Okay, maybe I do. But real wives don't color code their makeup. This is organized by, she caught herself. You know what? Fine. They stared at each other across the suite, then simultaneously burst into laughter. Real laughter. The kind that eased the knots in her shoulders and made the situation feel slightly less insane. This is completely ridiculous, she said. Absolutely. He grinned, and she was reminded of the Stefan she'd known before, the one who'd made her teenage heart flutter. But we can do this. It's just 3 days of acting. Right. Acting. But neither of them sounded convinced. The restaurant Antonio Castellano chose was elegant without being pretentious, perched on the beach with waves providing ambient sound and sunset painting, everything gold. Lavender wore a navy dress that hugged her curves, professional but feminine, and she didn't miss how Stefan's eyes tracked her movement when she emerged from the bathroom. Antonio and Maria Castellano were already seated when they arrived. Antonio was silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who missed nothing. Maria was elegant and warm, with the kind of smile that made you want to confess secrets. The Evermonts, Antonio stood, clasping Stefan's hand firmly. Or should I say, the Coles. I understand Lavender kept her name professionally. We're modern that way, Stefan said smoothly, his hand finding the small of Lavender's back. The touch sent electricity up her spine. They sat, menus distributed, Wine poured. Small talk flowed about the weather, the resort, Miami's transformation over the years. Then Maria leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with interest. "So tell us, how did you two meet? I love a good romance." Under the table, Stefan's hand found Lavender's knee. The touch was a signal, a reminder, an anchor. She felt his thumb press gently. "Follow my lead." "College," Lavender said, letting warmth color her voice. "He was my brother's insufferable roommate. All business, even back then. I thought he was the most arrogant person I'd ever met." Stefan's hand squeezed gently, and when she glanced at him, his eyes held amusement. "And I thought she was a brat, Jasper's little sister, who was always underfoot, asking too many questions, challenging everything I said." "So what changed?" Antonio asked, watching them carefully. Stefan brought her hand from under the table to rest on top, his fingers interlacing with hers in full view. "She grew up. I grew up. We realized we'd been fighting the inevitable." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that looked tender and possessive and entirely too real. Lavender's pulse jumped, and she saw Maria's expression soften. "How long have you been married?" Maria asked. 2 years, Stefan said without hesitation. "Best decision I ever made." His thumb stroked over her wedding ring, a simple band they'd purchased that morning, already feeling like it belonged there. "Even when she's stubborn and refuses to listen to reason. Even when he's overprotective and thinks he knows best," Lavender countered, falling into the rhythm. They sparred gently through dinner, trading barbs that felt too natural, too easy. Finishing each other's sentences, sharing knowing glances. His hand stayed on hers, or moved to her back, or brushed her arm. Each touch deliberate, selling the story, but feeling increasingly less like performance and more like permission. "You can always tell real love," Antonio said over dessert, his sharp eyes moving between them. "It's in the small moments, the way you look at each other when you think no one's watching." Maria nodded enthusiastically. "You two have it. That spark, that partnership." She reached across to squeeze Lavender's free hand. "Hold on to that. It's rare." If only they knew. If only Lavender knew where the acting ended and reality began. Walking back to the hotel, the Miami night wrapped around them like velvet, humid and warm, carrying the scent of ocean and night-blooming flowers. They walked close but not touching, the absence of contact somehow more noticeable than its presence. "You're good at this," Stefan said finally. "So are you." She glanced at him sideways. "Almost too good." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just..." She struggled for words that wouldn't reveal too much. "You play the devoted husband very convincingly." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The hotel lights cast shadows across his features, making him look dangerous and beautiful. "Who says I'm playing?" Her heart stopped. Before she could formulate a response, before she could process what those words meant, his phone rang. The sound shattered the moment like glass. Jasper's name lit up the screen. Reality crashed back with brutal force. Stefan answered, stepping slightly away, and Lavender stood there watching him, feeling like she'd been doused in cold water. "Hey, man," Stefan said, his voice easy. "Yeah, Miami's great. Laughs. She's perfect. Yeah, we're handling the Castellanos. Don't worry." Perfect. He'd called her perfect to Jasper, and the word hurt because it meant nothing. This was all performance. Method acting, like her father said. She was being an idiot, reading meaning into touches that were strategic, kisses that were for show. Stefan hung up, and when he looked at her, something in her expression must have shown because his face fell slightly. "Lavender, we should get back," she interrupted, already walking. "Big day tomorrow. Property tours, more dinners. Need to stay in character." "Right. In character." His voice was flat. They rode the elevator in silence, entered the suite without speaking. Lavender went straight to the bathroom, changed quickly, and emerged to find Stefan already on the love seat, a pillow and blanket making the best of an impossible situation. "Good night," she said. "Good night." She turned off the light and climbed into the massive bed alone, staring at the ceiling. This was when she realized the most dangerous lies were the ones that felt like truth. Because somewhere between pretending to love Stefan and pretending not to investigate him, she'd lost track of what was real. And that terrified her more than any corporate espionage ever could. At 2 a.m, Lavender lay wide awake in the massive hotel bed, staring at shadows on the ceiling. Sleep felt impossible with her mind spinning, and Stefan just feet away on that ridiculous love seat. Then his phone buzzed, once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. She told herself not to look, but her body moved anyway, sliding quietly from the bed, padding across plush carpet on silent feet. The phone screen glowed in the darkness, encrypted messages, the kind that required special apps, the kind people used when they didn't want anyone tracking their communications. The preview was visible. "Payment is ready. Send final coordinates by Friday." Another message appeared. "Confirm transfer. Need location details ASAP." Her stomach dropped so fast, she thought she might be sick. The room tilted. All the air left her lungs at once, but the evidence glowed in the darkness, undeniable and damning. Stefan, who'd looked at her like she mattered, who'd kissed her hand across dinner tables, was the leak. Her hands shook as she pulled out her own phone, photographing the screen from multiple angles. The messages disappeared after 30 seconds, encrypted apps automatically deleting, but she had the photos now. She climbed back into bed, pulling covers up to her chin despite the Miami heat, and lay there with tears sliding silently down her temples. Morning came with brutal sunshine and a headache that felt like her skull was splitting. Stefan was already awake, dressed in casual clothes for the property tour, looking unfairly good while she felt like death. When their eyes met, she saw him register something wrong immediately. "Morning," he said carefully. "Coffee's ready. I ordered breakfast." "Thanks." The word came out flat, and she saw him flinch slightly. The property tour was scheduled for 9. They met the Castellanos at the beachfront site, and Lavender forced herself into professional mode, smiling and nodding and discussing development potential, while every cell in her body screamed. She stood as far from Stefan as possible without being obvious, never quite meeting his eyes. "Lavender." His voice came low, meant only for her, as they walked between buildings. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "You're lying." He caught her arm gently, stopping her. "You've barely looked at me all morning. Did I do something?" "Maybe I'm just tired of pretending." The words came out sharper than she intended, laced with all the hurt and betrayal churning in her chest. Hurt flashed across his face, quick and genuine before he shuddered it. "Right. Of course. The act. I forgot." He released her arm and walked ahead, shoulders rigid, and Lavender wanted to scream. The tension followed them through the entire tour. Antonio and Maria exchanged concerned glances, their earlier warmth cooling into polite professionalism. By the time they returned to the hotel for a late lunch meeting, the damage was visible. "Is everything all right?" Maria asked gently, her kind eyes moving between them. "You both seem strained." "Just tired," Stefan said smoothly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Long week." "Of course." Antonio's tone suggested he didn't believe it for a second. Back at the suite, the door barely closed before Stefan rounded on her. "What the hell is going on with you?" "Nothing," she repeated, but her voice shook. "Bullshit." He moved closer, frustration rolling off him in waves. "1 minute and then this morning, you can't even look at me." "What changed?" She laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "How much are they paying you?" The confusion on his face would have been convincing if she didn't know better. "What?" "The competitors. Whoever you're selling our information to, how much is it worth? Our company? My family? Me?" The words tumbled out, gaining momentum. "How much am I worth in your calculations, Stefan?" His face went white, then flooded with red. She watched the emotions chase across his features, shock, hurt, fury. "You think I'm the leak?" "I saw the messages." She pulled out her phone, showing him the photos with shaking hands. "Payment is ready. Send final coordinates." What else am I supposed to think? For a moment, he just stared at the screen. Then he laughed, a sound so bitter it cut. Of course you'd think that. Then explain it. She was yelling now, past caring. Tell me what those messages mean. I can't or won't. Both. He spun to face her fully, and she'd never seen him this angry, this uncontrolled. You want to know what those messages are about? They're about your brother. Your perfect, charming brother who's been lying to everyone for 2 years. The words hit like physical blows. What are you talking about? Jasper is in trouble, Lavender. Deep, dangerous trouble. And I've been trying to fix it without dragging you into it because... His voice cracked slightly. Because protecting you matters more than you trusting me. Protecting me from what? Ask him. Stefan grabbed his jacket, movements sharp with fury and hurt. Ask your brother why I've been liquidating my entire investment portfolio. Ask him why I've been meeting with people who make loan sharks look friendly. Stefan. No. He turned at the door, and the look on his face made her chest ache. You want to believe I'm the villain? Fine. But when you figure out the truth, remember that I've been keeping Jasper's secret to keep you safe. The door slammed behind him, and Lavender stood in the empty suite with her phone still in her hand, and her world crumbling around her. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely dial Jasper's number. It rang twice before he answered, his voice cheerful and oblivious. Hey, how's Miami? You and Stefan playing house? I need you to tell me the truth. Her voice came out raw, barely controlled. Right now, Jasper. No jokes, no deflection. The truth. The silence stretched so long she thought the call had dropped. Then quietly, Stefan told you. Told me what? Another long pause. Then her brother's voice came through, cracking with shame. I have a problem, love. Gambling. I'm in debt. $300,000 deep. The room spun. She sat down hard on the bed, pressing her free hand to her mouth. Oh, my God. The people I owe. They're dangerous. Really dangerous. When I couldn't pay, they started threatening the family. They said they'd hurt you specifically to get to Dad. His voice broke completely. They knew everything. So what did you do? I gave them information, company information, deal specifics, bid amounts, acquisition targets. I'm the leak. The words came out like a confession, heavy with guilt. Those 3 lost deals, that was me. I sold out our family to keep you safe. She couldn't breathe, couldn't process. Jasper, her brother. How could you? I didn't know what else to do. They had photos of you, Lav. They said they'd make it look like an accident. He was crying now. I couldn't let them hurt you. Dad doesn't know. No one knows. Except Stefan. He figured it out 3 months ago. Jasper laughed bitterly. But instead of turning me in, he's been paying my debts. Those messages you saw? That was him arranging final payments. He's liquidated almost his entire portfolio. He's destroyed his financial future to save me. Tears were streaming down Lavender's face now, hot and fast. Why would he do that? Jasper's answer came quietly, weighted with truth. Because he loves you. He's been in love with you since before you left for London. Time seemed to stop. He never said anything. Because you were off limits, my little sister. Too young. Jasper's voice went rough. When I confronted him about paying my debts 3 months ago, he finally admitted it. Said protecting you was worth destroying himself financially. But he swore to me he'd never act on it. He promised he'd keep his distance, that he'd never cross that line. The messages I saw were him confirming the last payment went through. As of last week, my debts are paid. I'm clean. Lavender's mind raced. Then who leaked the Castellano deal? What? Someone leaked our Castellano proposal to a competitor 2 days ago. If you stopped 2 weeks ago and it wasn't Stefan, then there's another leak. Jasper's voice went hard, and we still don't know who. She hung up and ran, through the hotel corridors, down to the lobby, searching. She found Stefan at the hotel bar, sitting alone with a glass of whiskey he wasn't drinking, staring at nothing. Lavender slid onto the stool beside him, and he didn't look at her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For which part?" His voice was flat, exhausted. "Accusing me of corporate espionage? Thinking I'd betray your family?" "All of it." The tears were back, burning her throat. "Jasper told me everything." His jaw clenched, the muscle jumping. "He wasn't supposed to. You've been protecting him, paying his debts, protecting me from threats I didn't even know existed." "It's what I do." He finally looked at her, and the rawness in his expression made her chest ache. "I protect the people I care about, even when they don't trust me, even when it costs me everything." "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. He turned fully toward her, and she saw the exhaustion carved into his features, the weight he'd been carrying alone. "You really don't know? I need to hear you say it. Because I've been in love with you since you were too young, too off limits, and too much my best friend's little sister." The words came out rough, like they hurt. "Since your 20th birthday, when you came home from college wearing that red dress and laughing at something, and I realized I was completely, irrevocably in love with you, and I couldn't do anything about it." Her pulse stuttered. "When you left for London, I told myself time would be enough to get over you, to move on, to find someone else." He laughed bitterly. "And then you walked back into that office, and I realized time doesn't matter. You're it for me, Lavender. The only woman I've ever—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "And I can't have you." "Why not?" "Because Jasper is my best friend. Because your father gave me everything when I had nothing. Because your family took me in and made me one of you." He looked away. "I owe them the decency of not touching what I have no right to touch." She stood, moving to stand directly in front of him, forcing him to look at her. "What if I want you to have me?" He closed his eyes like she was torturing him. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because I'm barely holding on here, Lavender. Because if I touch you the way I want to, I won't be able to stop. I won't be able to pretend this is temporary or fake, or just for show." His eyes opened, and the intensity in them stole her breath. "I'll want all of you." "Then don't lose me." She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Stefan, I'm 25 years old. I have an MBA. I run a company. I know exactly what I'm asking for. I'm asking for you." Something in him snapped. She saw it happen, saw the moment his control fractured and fell away. He stood abruptly, towering over her, and his hand came up to cup her face with a gentleness that contradicted the desperation in his eyes. "You don't know what you're asking," he said, but his thumb was already tracing her cheekbone, his breath coming faster. "I know exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking you to stop being noble and just—" He kissed her. Years of wanting compressed into a single moment. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate and claiming and inevitable, like a storm finally breaking. His hands tangled in her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss, and she melted into him with a sound that might have been his name. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, even though there was no more space between them. He tasted like whiskey, and restraint finally shattered, and she couldn't get enough. When his hand slid down her back, pressing her against him, she forgot they were in a public bar. Forgot everything except this. "Elevator," he muttered against her mouth. "Now." They stumbled toward the elevators, barely separating long enough to press the button. The doors opened, and they fell inside, Stefan's back hitting the wall as she pressed against him. His hands were everywhere, her hips, her back, threading through her hair, and she couldn't think past the feeling of finally having him. "The Castellanos," he managed between kisses, even as his mouth traced down her neck. "We have dinner." "They're busy," she gasped, tilting her head to give him better access. "We'll reschedule. Keep going." He groaned, the sound vibrating against her throat, and she felt it everywhere. The elevator chimed for their floor, and they somehow made it out. Down the hallway, Stefan backing her against their suite door while he fumbled for the keycard. The door opened, and they stumbled inside. It slammed shut behind them, and his mouth found hers again, hungry and possessive. She was drowning in him, in years of waiting finally ending, in the way he touched her like she was precious and necessary. Lavender, he breathed against her lips, and the way he said her name, like a prayer, like a promise, made her knees weak. "Don't stop," she whispered back. So he didn't. Dawn crept through the windows in shades of pink and gold, painting the tangled sheets and their intertwined bodies in soft light. Lavender lay with her head on Stefan's chest, listening to his heartbeat, tracing idle patterns on his skin. His arm wrapped around her, holding her close, and she'd never felt safer. "I should regret this," he said quietly, his voice rough with sleep. She tilted her head up to look at him. "Do you?" His eyes met hers, dark and honest. "Not even a little bit." She smiled, something warm blooming in her chest, and went back to tracing patterns. "What are we going to tell Jasper?" Stefan groaned, his arm tightening around her. "He's going to kill me. Slowly. Possibly creatively. He'll understand. Your optimism is adorable and completely unfounded." But he was smiling. She could hear it in his voice. She laughed, the sound light and free, and felt him relax beneath her. They lay in comfortable silence for a moment, before reality started creeping back in. She sobered, remembering. What about the company? The leaks through Jasper? "They're not happening anymore. I paid off his debts last week. He's done." Then, she sat up suddenly, the sheet pooling around her waist. "Stefan, who leaked the Castellano deal specifications?" He froze. "What?" "This morning, before you woke up, I got an email." Her mind was already racing, putting pieces together. "Our entire pitch for the Castellanos, the eco-luxury concept, the timeline, the financials. Someone sent it to their main competitor. The timestamp says 2 days ago." Stefan sat up beside her, alert now, all traces of sleepy contentment gone. "But Jasper stopped 2 weeks ago." "Exactly." She met his eyes, seeing her own realization reflected there. "Which means, there's another leak." His voice went hard. "And they're still active." The emergency meeting was called for 8 a.m. Monday morning. Lavender walked into the conference room with Stefan beside her, neither of them hiding anymore. They'd spent the flight back from Miami strategizing, planning, piecing together what they knew. Now, it was time to act. Thomas Evermont stood at the head of the table, looking older than he had just days before. Jasper slouched in his chair, avoiding everyone's eyes, shame written across every line of his body. Richard sat in his usual spot, composed and professional as always, completely unaware that his world was about to end. "We have a serious problem," Thomas began without preamble. "Someone leaked our complete Miami strategy to Castellano's primary competitor. Same pattern as before, exact specifications, timeline, financials, everything." Jasper straightened immediately, panic flashing across his face. "It wasn't me. Dad, I swear, I've been clean for 2 weeks. I haven't—" "I believe you, son." Thomas's voice was heavy but firm. "Which means our problem is bigger than we thought. The leak is still active." Lavender leaned forward. "We need to pull server logs, see who's been accessing executive files, when, and from where." "I'll handle that," Stefan interrupted, already pulling out his laptop. "I have admin access to the security systems." For the next 3 hours, they dug. Lavender and Stefan worked side by side, pulling files, cross-referencing timestamps, tracking digital footprints. Jasper fetched coffee and paste. Thomas made phone calls, quietly alerting legal to stand by. And Richard sat calmly reviewing documents, the picture of a trusted advisor doing his job, until the pattern emerged. "There," Stefan said quietly, turning his laptop so Lavender could see. "Look at the access times. Files opened at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4:30 in the morning, all from Richard's login credentials, accessing deals he had no direct involvement in, downloading complete packages to external drives." "Cross-reference with the leak dates," Lavender whispered, her stomach twisting. Stefan's fingers flew across the keyboard. Every leaked deal matched with Richard's late-night access, usually within 24 hours of the information reaching competitors. And there, in his financial records they'd quietly subpoenaed, were wire transfers. 50,000 here, 75,000 there. Payments that coincided perfectly with each. Lost acquisition. Oh my God, Jasper breathed, looking over their shoulders. Richard? Thomas came to look, and Lavender watched her father's face crumble. 20 years of trust, of partnership, of treating this man like family. All of it shattering in the face of undeniable evidence. We set a trap, Lavender said, her voice harder than she'd known it could be. We create something irresistible and see if he takes the bait. They spent the rest of the day crafting the perfect lie. A fake acquisition target, prime Manhattan property, mixed-use development potential, projected value of $75 million. They built complete documentation, financials that looked real, architectural renderings, market analysis, everything a competitor would need to outbid them. Then they fed it to Richard. Only Richard. A confidential memo marked for his eyes only, asking for his strategic input before they presented to the full board. 22 hours later, their contact at the competing firm called. Someone had approached them with detailed information about Evermont Real Estate's Manhattan project. They had him. The confrontation happened in Thomas's office with the door closed and security standing by outside. Richard walked in expecting a normal meeting and found the entire executive team waiting, their faces grim. "Sit down, Richard," Thomas said. Something flickered across Richard's face. Awareness, maybe, or resignation. But he sat calmly, folding his hands in his lap like they were discussing quarterly projections. "You figured it out," he said simply. The admission hung in the air. Jasper made a wounded sound. Thomas's hands clenched on his desk. "Why?" The word came out broken. 20 years, Richard. I trusted you with everything. You helped me build this company from nothing. You were family." "No." Richard's voice was calm, almost pleasant, which made it worse somehow. "I was never family, Thomas. I was the help, the loyal employee, the one who worked 80-hour weeks while you took vacations with your real family, the one who closed the deals that made you millions while I got a salary and a pat on the back. You were compensated fairly," Thomas started. "Fairly?" Richard laughed, sharp and bitter. "I built this company with you, side by side, deal by deal, year after year. But when it came time to name successors, to talk about ownership, about legacy, you gave it to your children. Your daughter gets COO after 6 years in London. Your son gets executive position despite being mediocre at best. Stefan gets groomed for partner after less than a decade. But me? 20 years. And I'm still just the trusted advisor." "So you decided to destroy us?" Lavender's voice was ice. "I decided to take what I earned." Richard's composure never cracked. "The competitors offered me what you never would. Partnership, equity, a seat at a table instead of standing behind it." Stefan leaned forward, his voice dangerous. "You framed Jasper. You knew about his gambling problem and let us think he was the only leak." "His gambling problem was convenient," Richard admitted with a shrug. "I might have mentioned it to certain people. Made sure the right creditors heard about the heir to Evermont Real Estate having exploitable debts. If he happened to get in deeper, to start leaking information to save himself, well, that just gave me cover." Jasper lunged across the table, and Stefan barely caught him, holding him back as Jasper snarled. "You son of a—" "Security's on their way," Thomas said, his voice dead. "You're done, Richard." "Make sure what?" Richard stood calmly, adjusting his tie. "That everyone knows you couldn't keep your own house in order? That your company was leaking like a sieve for months and you didn't notice? Go ahead. Tell everyone. See how that works for your reputation." He turned to leave, then paused at the door, looking back at Stefan and Lavender with something like amusement. "You two, by the way. Terrible at hiding it. I've known since Miami. The way you look at each other. Please, it's obvious." His eyes slid to Jasper. "Does your best friend know you're sleeping with his little sister, Stefan? Or was that another secret you were keeping?" The silence was deafening. Jasper turned slowly to face Stefan, his expression unreadable. "What?" Security arrived then, escorting Richard out while he went without resistance, and Lavender wanted to scream. Not now. This couldn't be happening now. "Jasper," she started. "Not you." Jasper's hand came up, cutting her off. His eyes stayed locked on Stefan. Him. My office. Now. The walk to Jasper's office felt like a funeral march. Lavender started to follow, but Jasper's look stopped her. This was between them. Brother and best friend. The door closed, and through the glass walls, she watched them face each other. Inside, Jasper's control shattered. You promised me. Stefan said nothing, just stood there, taking it. When I found out you loved her, when you finally admitted it 3 months ago, I made you promise. I made you swear you'd never act on it. Jasper's hands clenched into fists, and you looked me in the eye and gave me your word. I know. You know? Jasper's voice rose. That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? Stefan's voice was rough. That I'm sorry? I'm not. That I regret it? I don't. You want me to lie to you again? I want you to explain how my best friend could promise to stay away from my sister, then sleep with her the first chance he got. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Stefan? Your father sent us to Miami, not me. But you didn't fight it, did you? Jasper laughed bitterly. You saw your opportunity and took it. Promise be damned. Stefan's jaw clenched. You want the truth? I tried to keep that promise. For 3 months I avoided her, kept my distance, stayed professional, and it was killing me. So you broke your word. So I fell in love with her harder. Stefan's voice dropped. Every day she walked into that office, every meeting where she challenged me. He stopped, swallowing hard. I tried, Jasper. But then Miami happened, and we were trapped in that elevator, and she was having a panic attack in my arms, and I realized something. What? That keeping my promise to you meant breaking something fundamental in myself, and I had to choose. Stefan met Jasper's eyes steadily. I chose her. I'll always choose her. Even if it means losing me. The question hung in the air. I don't want to lose you, Stefan said quietly. You're my brother. But I won't apologize for loving her. I won't pretend I regret finally having her. And I won't let you make me choose between keeping your approval and keeping her. Jasper flinched like he'd been struck. You already chose. Yes, I did, Stefan's voice gentled. And I'd make the same choice again. Every time. Because she's not something I can walk away from, Jasper. She never was. You should have told me. When you realized you couldn't keep the promise. And said what? There was no good way to tell you. No right time. I don't hate you, Jasper's voice broke. You paid my debts. You saved my life. You destroyed your financial future for me. It's not betrayal when she chose me too. Jasper looked up sharply. What? You think I manipulated her? She knows everything, Jasper, about the promise I made you, about how loving her has cost me. Stefan's voice dropped to something raw. And she chose me anyway. That's not betrayal. That's two people finally admitting what's been true. The silence stretched. Then Jasper, so quietly Stefan almost missed it. Does she make you happy? Very well. And you really love her? This isn't just, I've loved her for years. I'll love her when we're both 90. This isn't temporary or convenient, or anything less than permanent. Stefan's voice shook slightly. She's it for me. Okay. Jasper held up a hand. I don't need the romance novel version. Despite everything, Stefan's mouth twitched. Sorry. I'm still furious with you. I know. And I need time to process this. I understand. Jasper moved toward the door, then stopped, turning back. But Stefan, if you hurt her, if you break her heart after breaking your promise to protect her, you'll destroy me. I'm counting on it. Something shifted in Jasper's expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of acceptance. Don't make me regret letting this happen. Never. Stefan found Lavender in her office afterward, pacing like a caged animal. She spun when he entered, anxiety written across every feature. How bad? He sighed, exhaustion hitting him all at once. Pretty bad. He needs time. I should talk to him. Wait. He caught her hand, pulling her back. Before you do, you need to understand something. He knew, she said quietly. Jasper knew you loved me. You promised him you'd stay away. Stefan's jaw tightened. He told you that? Weeks ago, when I called him about your messages. She stepped closer. You broke your promise. For me. I'd break 1,000 promises for you. Even to your best friend? Even to him. His voice was firm. I tried to keep it, Lavender. For 3 months I tried. But I can't unlove you, and I won't apologize for finally letting myself have you. She kissed him then, soft and sure. Good, because I'm not sorry either. I choose you, she said firmly. Jasper's opinion, my father's approval, the company politics. None of it matters. I choose you. Today. Tomorrow. Every day after. Do you understand? He looked at her like she was salvation and miracle combined. You might regret that. Never, she promised. 1 week after Richard's arrest, Lavender stood in the Evermont Estates dining room and felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The crystal chandelier sparkled overhead, the same one that had illuminated countless family dinners throughout her childhood. But tonight felt different. Stefan stood beside her, his hand resting on the small of her back. Jasper sat across the table, his expression carefully neutral but not quite hostile anymore. Progress, she supposed. Their mother fussed with place settings, and their father sat at the head of the table, watching them all with eyes that missed nothing. I want to address the elephant in the room, Thomas said once. They were all seated, wine poured, the first course untouched. Everyone tensed. Stefan, Lavender. Her father's voice was calm, measured. I know about you two. Dad? Lavender started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish. I'm not blind. I saw it in Miami, though you both thought you were so clever. A slight smile tugged at his mouth. Hell, I saw it years ago. Stefan's fork clattered against his plate. You knew? At Lavender's 20th birthday party. You left early, remember? Because she wore that red dress, and you looked at her like she'd hung the moon and the stars. Thomas leaned back in his chair. I knew you were in love with her, before you fully understood it yourself. Lavender stared at her father, speechless. You knew? This whole time? I'm observant, sweetheart. It's why I built an empire. Her father's expression softened. I knew that if I pushed the issue, if I confronted Stefan about it, I'd lose him from the company. He would have left, rather than risk making things awkward. So I waited. For what? Stefan's voice was barely above a whisper. For her to grow up. For you to figure your shit out. For both of you to be ready. Thomas took a sip of wine, completely calm. I watched you torture yourself, Stefan. Watched you keep your distance. Date other women who clearly weren't her. Work yourself into the ground trying to forget. It was admirable. Painful to watch, but admirable. You could have said something, Lavender said, her voice shaking slightly. And robbed you both of figuring it out yourselves? Of that moment in Miami when you finally stopped fighting it? Her father shook his head. Some things need to happen in their own time. Jasper cleared his throat, and everyone turned to look at him. He was staring at his wine glass, a flush creeping up his neck. I might have suggested the Miami assignment. Silence crashed down. What? Stefan and Lavender said simultaneously. The fake marriage thing. Dad was worried about the Castellanos, and I might have mentioned that you two had chemistry, that maybe forcing you into close quarters would finally make you both pull your heads out of your asses. Jasper looked up, defensive. You've been dancing around each other for years. It was exhausting to watch. You knew too? Lavender's voice rose. Everyone knew except me? Yes, her family said in unison. She started laughing. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. Years of secret longing, the investigation, the suspicion, the drama in Miami. And apparently everyone had known all along. Oh, Lavender. Her mother reached over to pat her hand, eyes twinkling. Sweetheart, you're brilliant at business, but you're adorably oblivious about matters of the heart. I tried to be subtle, Jasper added, and now he was almost smiling. Asking Stefan about you, constantly. Making sure you two were always assigned to the same projects. That elevator that malfunctioned? I might have mentioned to maintenance it was sticky that morning. You did not, Stefan said, but he was starting to smile too. I did. Figured 20 minutes trapped together might spark something. Jasper shrugged. Didn't work fast enough, so I went bigger with Miami. You're all insane, Lavender said, but she was laughing, and the tension that had been suffocating the room was finally lifting. Thomas stood, raising his wineglass. Now that we've established that this family apparently moonlights as matchmakers, I have an announcement. He looked at Stefan. I'd like you to consider becoming partner. Full equity stake. Co-leadership with Lavender. Stefan's eyes widened. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Lavender urged quietly, her hand finding his under the table. We're better together. We proved that with Castellano. You saved this company, Thomas continued. You protected my son when he didn't deserve it. You paid his debts with your own money. You caught the real leak. And you love my daughter with the kind of devotion that most men can't even comprehend. His voice went rough with emotion. If anyone deserves to help lead Evermont Real Estate into the future, it's you. Stefan looked at Lavender, and she saw years of want and fear and hope reflected in his eyes. She squeezed his hand, nodding. I'd be honored, he said finally. Good. Thomas raised his glass higher. To family. To partnership. To taking risks on the people who matter most. They toasted, and Lavender felt something settle in her chest. Her family. Stefan's family now too. Broken and repaired. Stronger for the breaking. After dinner, as they were leaving, Jasper pulled Stefan aside. Lavender watched from the car, holding her breath. I'm still processing this, Jasper said quietly. You in love. It's weird. I know. But you saved my life. You saved her life. You saved the company. Jasper extended his hand. And you make her happy. I can see it. So, welcome to the family again. Stefan clasped his hand, and Lavender saw the emotion flash across both their faces. Brothers, now in more ways than one. 6 months later, Lavender stood in their penthouse, Stefan's place that had become theirs, watching Manhattan glitter in gold and purple twilight through floor-to-ceiling windows. Evermont Real Estate was thriving under their co-leadership. The Castellano Resort was breaking ground next week, and she was living with a man who loved her with an intensity that should probably terrify her, but instead made her feel safer than she'd ever felt. Stefan's obsessive tendencies hadn't diminished. If anything, claiming her had made them worse. But he was also tender in ways that surprised her. Gentle when she was exhausted. Patient when she was stressed. Protective in ways that made her feel cherished rather than controlled. You're thinking too loud. Stefan's voice came from the doorway, and she turned to find him watching her with that familiar intensity. She smiled. Just thinking about how far we've come. He moved toward her slowly, and she felt her pulse quicken the way it always did. And now? Now I know you're just obsessively in love with me. Accurate. He reached her, hands settling on her hips. Though I prefer devoted to obsessive. They're the same thing with you. He kissed her softly. When he pulled back, something shifted in his expression, nervousness mixing with determination. I need to ask you something. Stefan. He pulled out a small velvet box and dropped to one knee, Manhattan glittering behind him. I've loved you for 6 years. Been yours even when you didn't know it. He opened the box, revealing a perfect ring, her eyes filled with tears. I know I'm obsessive. I know I cross every line. But it's real. It's forever. His voice dropped, rough with emotion. Will you marry me? Will you let me love you obsessively for the rest of your life? Yes. The word came out choked with tears and laughter. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood and kissed her, with 6 years of restraint finally shattered. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. Mine, he whispered. Yours, she agreed. Always yours. I'm never letting you go. Good, because I'd just chase you down if you tried. His smile was pure dark satisfaction. "We're both in love." "Perfectly in love," she corrected. Later that night, wrapped in sheets with her engagement ring catching moonlight and Stefan's possessive hands on her skin, Lavender thought about the girl who'd returned from London 6 months ago. She'd had no idea she was walking into the orbit of a man obsessively in love with her, who sacrificed everything to keep her safe, who claimed her completely. "You're my fiancée now. Soon, you'll be my wife." His voice dropped to something dark and promising. "I can barely control myself now. Once you're legally mine, I won't even try." Heat pooled low in her stomach. Is that a threat? It's a promise. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back. "I'll want you every minute. I'll want everyone to know you're mine. I'll be insufferable and possessive." She turned in his arms, seeing the dark devotion in his eyes. "Then I can't wait to be your wife. I'm never letting you go," he repeated, and it sounded like a vow. "Never," she agreed, and sealed it with a kiss. Outside, the city glittered with possibility. Inside, two people who'd found each other held each other like letting go was never an option. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.